What's up, guys? Welcome back to Empire Barbell. This is Bromley. So I want to try a different segment here. I want to talk about some principles that are valuable not just in the gym and in training, but that can be carried out to life in general. What I find over and over is that the more you talk to people, the more you read, the more that you expose your horizon, the more you're going to find a lot of the same principles tend to be carried out by the most successful people. Whether you're talking about people that perform well in business, people that are serial entrepreneurs, people that do well in the highest realms of industry, whether you're talking about elite athletes, even if you're talking about people that are consistently successful in maintaining their personal relationships, be it a marriage, friendships, business relationships, whatever you like. Successful people tend to follow a somewhat rigid list of principles that show themselves to carry out over and over and over to yield very predictable results. Now, this is all rooted in science. It's rooted in objectivity. The problem with people is that we are emotional. We make decisions that are impulsive. We make decisions that favor instant gratification. If we see a lot of food, we eat because we are not sure when food will be readily available again. When we have an opportunity to mate, we mate because we're not sure when that opportunity will present itself again. We are made to exist in a physical climate that is harsh and unforgiving and unpredictable. Now, part of what makes human beings what we are, what maintains our status, is our role in the world, is that we have control. We have control. We have the ability to affect our environment. We have the ability to plan and predict and make better decisions. We are able to go one step above nature because we understand how things work, and we can perform instead of from an emotional standpoint, we can perform from an objective standpoint. And that is what leads to successful decisions. It's just like in a casino, how the house always wins. The house doesn't always win because the cards are stacked so heavily that every bet that is made goes to the house. The house always wins because over a long period of time, after bet after bet after bet, the house is favored very slightly. And it is those repeated bets, those repeated actions that over a long period of time yield this huge result as far as the casino getting wealthy off the impulsive decisions of flawed human beings. So the first principle I want to talk about is self-awareness. Self-awareness is probably the bedrock of a principled, purposefully driven, successful human being. Self-awareness governs how we see ourselves. The fact is that any machine can be built. In fact, machines are being built that are intelligent in the sense that you can feed in information and it will spit back the right answer. If you have an Amazon Echo, if you have an Alexa, if you have a Cortana, if you have any type of these up and coming, artificial intelligence, first generation type applications, Alexa just went off in the office. What a time to be alive. If you have any one of these applications, you know that they have a very incredible capacity to take in information and spit back something that looks like a right answer. Now, what separates us from simple machines is that we have this meta level, we have this secondary level where we don't just spit out our emotions, we don't just spit out our ideas or our thoughts. We have an ability to look in on ourselves, to rate those emotions, to take inventory on what we feel and why we feel it, to look at our past, to look at decisions we've made. We are the drivers. We are the ghosts in the machine. We have the ability to be the captains of our own ship. And that is what separates a conscious, sentient being from a simple machine. So without self-awareness, you have no ability for self-critique. And without that, you cannot grow. You cannot have intrinsic growth. So if we go down this flow chart, the foundational principle is to be your own worst critic. Now that's rooted in science, like I said. If any of you have taken a hard science, that's a real science, not a fake science like sociology or something, things where there's objective measurements, things that you can look at things in concrete terms and come to conclusions. If you look at any scientific discipline, if you've participated in a lab, if you have carried out any studies of yourself, you know that there is more time spent writing about potential sources of error in the experiment than there is doing the actual experiment itself. Science only works in as much as it can correct for its own inherent sources of error. Human beings are no different. If we're trying to get closer to truth, we have to set that ceiling for how much error we can allow for before we realize that we're just completely full of shit. And most people are completely full of shit. with their excuses, with their explanations as to why they didn't perform. Most people don't take honest inventory. So, in a world where you have no self-criticism, no self-awareness, the only logical thing when you fail and you don't have the ability to hold yourself accountable for that failure is that others and outside circumstances are a result for your shortcomings. Now, this is very common. I mean, a lot of people have talked about victim mentality, and I believe that's a real phenomenon. I believe human beings are flawed. This is not a gender thing. This is not a racial thing. This is a flawed fucking human being thing. Human beings in general like to take the path of least resistance. And when that means deferring responsibility, more often than not, that's the path we take. I've been guilty of it. The people I know and respect the most have been guilty of it. What separates someone who is successful and who is destined for better things in life from someone who's destined to be stagnant is the ability to take ownership of that, to take it and grow. So if we blame everyone else for the bad things that happen to us, we can't control external factors. We can't control what the weather's gonna be like. We can't control who's gonna talk shit behind our back. We can't control if our boss likes us. We can't affect the thoughts of others. We could talk about that in a just world, it might be X, Y, or Z. In a righteous world, we won't have to deal with those obstacles. But the only world that exists is the one that we have here, and we have to behave accordingly. So this falls under the category of, what the fuck are you gonna do with that information? There is nothing you can do. And when you have a vital piece of information that does not lead to an actionable list of things, it's just as good as if you had no information at all. You can't do anything with it. You are only able to affect your life and your decisions and to plan ahead. When you have no self-criticism, it's easy to lead to the belief that your efforts are good enough. And most people walk around thinking they did enough today. It's a comfortable position to slip into when you feel like I did enough, I worked hard enough, I trained hard enough. Now, that usually comes about as part of a particular perspective. That perspective is consistent with what you experience and the people around you, and those different experiences all coming out to this average where you can kind of weigh yourself around your climate day to day and say, well, how did I rank? We're all doing that at all times. We're all being ranked. They say it's kind of a truism that you're the average of your closest 5 friends. So if you exist in a culture of people that all work part-time, you might not see that anything needs to change, even though long-term you would like to grow out of that bubble that you live in. I train a client who's Indian. Him and his family moved here from New Delhi about 15 years ago. His wife is a cancer surgeon. He runs an IT consulting business. He's one of the smartest and most disciplined people that I know, and he comes in, day out to get his ass kicked in the gym because he realizes that sitting on the couch in his free time isn't good enough. Now, when I asked him, I said, is physical culture big in India? Like, do you have a lot of gyms the way they have them here, the way they have fitness 19s that are like Starbucks on every corner? Do you have that same type of environment? And he just looked at me with kind of not a confused face, kind of a blank face. And he said, no, people are too busy working. So realizing my American privilege, I mean, we can talk about other types of privilege. We have an American privilege. People in India, according to him, on average, work 6 days a week, 12-hour days. That's the norm. That is the norm. That is what is considered the minimum. If you do not work those hours, you are considered lazy. You are considered someone who doesn't prioritize providing for your family or being successful. How many people do you know? How many people in your circle work 70 hours a week, 60 hours a week? How many people do you know consistently work 40 hours a week? If that answer is very, very few, that probably tells you a lot about what you consider to be good enough as far as work ethic. Now, to give you a little bit of insight, and this isn't to put me on a pedestal, this is just how I have worked through these truths as the years went on. When I started this gym, there was other people involved. There's 3 of us in the beginning. And it started as just a personal training studio. We would come in just to train the people that we had, and we would close down when we didn't have clients. Well, when we went to make that jump into being a gym with regular hours, with regular membership, we started out taking shifts because we had to stay open, but we had 0 members. So we knew we would be showing up to do literally nothing. So we started out light. We had 9 hours throughout the day that we were open, and we would extend that as we got more members. So we each took a 3-hour shift. Longest 3 hours of my fucking life. I would come up with any reason not to show up. We don't have any members. Nobody's coming in today. Why do I have to be there for 3 hours when I know nothing's going to happen? As time went on, partners dropped off. One of them moved back home, and then our obligation to be here got split between 2 people. At that time, we had more hours, so we were on the hook for 6 hours each, morning and night shift. Hardest thing I've ever done, just being here in an empty gym for 6 hours. As time went on, I got used to it, I got acclimated, that became the norm. Eventually, I took over the gym 100%, and I was responsible for being here from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and from 10 to 2 on Saturdays. I've been doing that for so long that that's my norm. I don't know any different. My social obligations fit around that. My family obligations fit around that. I am able to maintain that work, and I don't walk around dragging my feet and say, God damn it, it's these long days are getting me. It's what has to be done, and I worked around it to make it happen. That was a standard that had to be met, so I made it happen. As we stand today, I come in 7 days a week because there's things I can't get done when there's nobody here. It was very easy for me to put that off. Forever I put that off. I said, I don't want to come in on Sunday. I'm here 7 days a week. I'm here 60 hours a week. I don't want to come in more. Sunday's my day. And when I got real with myself, I realized there was work that needed to be done. I had time on Sundays to do it. Therefore, I had no excuse for not coming in. So now my norm is every day at the gym. In some capacity, I'm either training clients, writing programming, planning events, catering to members, running the website. Those are not things. I have a choice. Do I want to partner up again and spread that responsibility? Absolutely fucking not. So I would rather come in and do the time. Now, it is only through objective self-awareness that I realized the reason I put that off for so long, the reason I didn't jump in right off the bat, is because I had low standards as to what a minimum work ethic was for somebody that wanted to grow something. When you viciously want to do something, when you need it like you need air, you will work harder than you ever thought you could in your entire life. And part of self-awareness is realizing that when you don't perform, when you don't meet that bare minimum, when you don't actively fight for it, that's not because of external factors. That's because you didn't want it that goddamn bad. When people get honest with themselves and they see how much work leads to what result, they really start to question their wants. It's easy to say, I want a business, I want to be an entrepreneur, I don't want a boss, I want to make my own money, I want to be set, I want to drive the nice car, I want to be my own man in this world. But when you outline what it takes to get there, how bad do you really want it? Now, this is applicable to all of you, especially the ones that are watching because of training purposes. Because I see people come in day out, people that want to lift, people that want to compete, as long as the barriers are low. Those are the people that come in, and they might follow a program for a little bit, until they're a little too sore after the first workout, and maybe they'll justify taking a day off after that. And then as the volume kicks up over the next week, they find that it doesn't get better, it actually gets worse. And those are the people that might talk themselves into doing another program, maybe something that's a little easier. Those are the people that are likely to not show up for a week at a time because they got sick or because family obligations got in the way. Self-awareness will lead you to find that your best efforts aren't actually your best efforts. And there's a difference between saying, I want to stand on that podium, and saying, I want to do the work that's going to get me to that podium. Without self-criticism, those improvements do not get made. Without self-criticism, you rely on others, you rely on external factors. It's not just that they're going to be responsible in your worldview for the bad things that happen to you, for the things that keep you down. They are going to be the only machine, the only mechanism that forces you to change your behavior. If you are not actively aware of what you do and why you do it, the only reason you would change is because society or the people around you or the environment around you forces you to change. That's much like the relationship an adult has with a child. A child will act out any which way. A child will give in to impulses. A child will delay obligation. Instant gratification is king. What do I want now? What do I feel now? What benefits me now in this moment? Which is where the parent has to come in and put the hand down and say, no, this is not in your best interest. This is not how principle works. This is not how you will grow as an adult. If you're putting your growth in the hands of others, the only reason you change, the only reason you do enough is because others expect it. The only reason you do enough is because you don't have a choice. How many people want you to be successful? How many people are going to take time out of their day to put you in the exact funnel that's going to get you that promotion or that better job, that's going to secure you financially, that's not going to spend all your money as soon as you get it? How many people are going to force you into the funnel that causes you to train and plan and work so that when you go into that meet, you fucking slay people? How many people are invested in their own goddamn lives? They don't have time to take care of you. You must be your own worst critic, because to not be your own worst critic is to put that in the hands of others. Now, there's a phenomenon that happens with people that aren't very practiced at this, and that's a shielding. I know people like this. I work with people like this. People that have gotten very good at shielding themselves. The common talking point of the day is the millennial generation, right? Everybody gets a trophy, participation medals to cushion self-esteem. So you have a generation of people who have never really learned how to deal with failure, or have never learned how to internalize a job not well done. So that self-criticism gets put on the back burner. Because self-criticism, I tell you this much, it doesn't feel nearly as good as when you can look at yourself and say, yeah, I did a good job. So if you train somebody under that circumstances, that no matter what effort they put out, they get a reward. They get to not just get the reward, they get to internalize that feeling of being good, of being accomplished. It's just as valuable. The second you take that away, there is mass confusion. And it's not the type of it's not the type of awareness, of recognition that, oh, I actually didn't do a good job. I was just full of shit my whole life. It is a type of confusion that does not know how to consciously internalize that reaction and turn it back to yield a more productive result. That shit is toxic. You cannot make somebody look inward. You cannot make somebody be aware of their own self and their own motives. And certainly nobody can make you be aware. That has to come from within. Now, when you are self-critical, when you are self-aware, this applies to lifters, this applies to men and women, this applies to stay-at-home moms and entrepreneurs and politicians and anybody who wants to get from point A to point B while producing a better result. When you are self-critical, you can identify your selfish needs. When you are self-critical, you can be honest with yourself that I did not do what I should have done because I wanted to do something different. You can take inventory. How often does this happen throughout the week? Where I have a scheduled plan and I deviate simply because I gave into my weaker emotions. So much of what will make your life successful will come from these bedrock principles. And these bedrock principles show themselves in everything. It's not just that you are amazing when you get to work or when you have an obligation on your desk. It's that it gets carried out in every aspect of your life. It's the fact that you wake up early because you know you need time to get ready and you don't want to show up to work 5 minutes late. It's the fact that you did not put your significant other's needs on the back burner because you were feeling something very strong at the moment and you chose to have that take precedent. It's the fact that when you are at work, you give the benefit of the doubt to your coworkers and you don't stir drama because you were in a bad mood that day. That you take on the work without looking at how much work everybody else is doing. That you know exactly what you're capable of and you rise to that occasion every single time. Self-awareness, being self-critical, that voice will always be in your head. Was it enough? Did I get there? And you'll say, I feel pretty good about it. I placed pretty high. And that check mark will come in. Could I have done a little bit more? And I fucking promise you, 9 times out of 10, you're going to look down and you're going to say, yeah, I could have done a little more. I could have pulled out a little more. If that voice is absent, if you do not have that voice in the back of your head, you are leaving money on the table. In your training, you are leaving growth on the table. When you are interacting with other people, you are leaving those relationships on the table. How many of you have had dysfunctional relationships or had bad relationships? It's easy to tell yourself, it was just the other person, he was a fucking asshole. It's really hard to look at yourself and say, you know what, I didn't listen to that person when they were trying to tell me something real. It's possible that their anger, their hostility came because I was not doing my job as a partner. It always takes 2 to tango. So we can talk about your work, we can talk about your habits and your ethic and how good your training is. When you're interacting with other people, it takes 2 to tango. And I promise you that if you have a history of bad relationships, I promise you that if you have a history of drama and turmoil in your personal life, self-criticism is the only way that you are going to fix that. When you have self-criticism, you can identify bad priorities. You can identify when you prioritize things that are less productive. Putting TV time over time with your family. Putting recreational time over saving money. Putting time sleeping in ahead of time in the gym. When you are self-critical, you can identify all of the things that you left on the table that kept you from being what exactly you could be. Your ability to identify, your ability to look inward on yourself, that is the only way that you can change course. I'm not talking to a single person right now who can't do better. I'm not talking to a single person right now who can't be a better role model to their kids, who can't be more reasoned and deliberate when they're arguing with other people, who can't be more compassionate, who can't work harder when they're supposed to work harder, who can't wake up on time when they're supposed to wake up on time, who can't put the needs of others ahead of their own needs. Every single one, every person is flawed. If you're religious, every person has sin. The person behind the computer right now watching this is no different. Be self-aware, and you will find the pieces in the rest of your life will begin to come together. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions about how to apply this, if there's anything you think will improve the conversation, please leave it below in the comments. If you have any other principles that you think are relevant to this discussion, anything you would like to see us talk about in the future, let us know and I'll try to get back to you. So please remember to like and subscribe. Once again, this is Bromley at Empire Barbell. We'll talk to you guys next time.